final showdown at the Tour of Missouri 2009. The opening days dominated by the sprinters. Names like Cavendish, Thor Hushovd and JJ Hayedo had to take a back seat when it came to the individual time trial, because on this occasion, Dave Zabriskie took a stranglehold on the event with a massive overall lead of 30 seconds. Now, what can he do around Kansas City?
Garmin Slipstream.
It's all come down to this, the final showdown right in the very heart of Kansas City for what is going to be the last chance that anybody will have to dethrone Dave Zabriskie for getting his first ever overall victory in a stage race. Hello everybody, my name's Paul Scher and I'm joined here by Frankie Andrea. A dramatic day yesterday on the run-in towards the finish. There were attacks and they did try to beat Dave Zabriskie, but Team Garmin Slipstream, I have to say, Frankie, they control the race to perfection.
They actually did. They rode very, very smartly. They stayed together and they had their strength in numbers. But on that final run in that little KOM, which didn't look like much, we saw Pennati and Dario Cataldo strike out trying to take some time out of David Zabriskie. But at the end, a fantastic sprint. 8 riders spread out across the road coming from nowhere. Kiki came around them all to pimp them at the line. And, of course, Thor Hushovd in second. He gained some more points because JJ Hayedo finished to 12th, and he ended up getting no points.
Well, it was a dramatic run to the line, but no change at all in the overall classification. Still, the rider from the United States, Dave Zabriskie, right at the top of the leaderboard. Let's have a look at how he got there. 612 miles in total over 7 days of racing, and it was all about the first 4 days really for the sprinters. Mark Cavendish going out and winning on stage 1, and he came back and did exactly the same thing the next day. But then he was overtaken by the big God of Thunder on stage 3 from Farmington to Raleigh. It was a day for Thor Hushovd.
It was a day for Thor Hushovd in a disorganized sprint, but the man in the green jersey coming across the finish line first, but also taking the lead away from Mark Cavendish. And then on stage 4 as Thor rolls up to the line, coming into Jefferson City, a crash. Sebastian Hayedo was down, but it was his brother, JJ Hayedo, taking the win at the line.
Well, although he grabbed himself the yellow jersey, everybody took a back seat for the time trial at Sedalia, 19 miles, and we've always called this the race of truth. Dave Zabriskie, national time trial champion, was looking to go out fast, but Tom Zerbel was the surprise leader very early on. Levi Leipheimer, recovering from injury at the Tour de France, knew that he had to do a good ride. Tom Zerbel caught his Minuteman out on the course, but nobody really was going to rival the performance of the man who is the national champion. As Zerbel recorded the fastest time, Dave Zabriskie was setting the race on fire.
Dave Zabriskie with the fastest split time, also pulling through all the way to the finish with the fastest time at the line, waiting for Gustav Larsson, silver medalist in the Olympics, but he would place second with David Zabriskie taking the yellow jersey in a big win for this young rider on Team Garmin.
A huge advantage going into the last 2 days of racing, 30 seconds over the second place rider, looking quite resplendent in his yellow jersey here, chatting to Levi Leipheimer, but his team had to really dig deep to control the attacks that came out on the open road.
It was a very fast, quick start to the stage. Jeremy Hunt breaking away, trying to build up the lead to be able to attack this riders of Garmin Slipstream riding on the front. Will Frischhorn on the front and the rest of his crew, but in the end, a KOM 7 miles from the finish saw Pennati and Dario Cataldo attack. These riders were sitting in 3rd and 4th on the GC.
They were looking to try and dethrone Dave Zabriskie, but his team were not going to be caught out on this occasion. Zabriskie, tucked into the main field, was not going to lose any time. It looked as if it was going to be, again, a formality for Team Cervelo test team, setting up the sprint at the end for their man, Thor Hushovd, but charging into the finishing town of St. Joseph, a little bit of confusion in the sprint.
A little bit of confusion. Columbia HTC on the front. You see George Hincapie doing the lead out, but then it was Thor Hushovd as the riders spread out across the line. One rider dashing out from the left side of the screen, and that was Francisco Kiki, the Italian.
In the lime green jersey there of Team Liquigas, getting himself a stage victory to add to the win he had last year, but that of course was on the final stage in St. Louis. All of the rest of the main field finished in exactly the same time, so the overall standing is still Dave Zabriskie at the top of the leaderboard by 30 seconds from Gustav Larsen and 44 to Tom Zerbel. It really was a great sprint to the line. Everybody looking at Thor Hushovd when out of nowhere Francesco Chicchi proved that he can be one of the fastest men in the world. But of course no change at all in the overall classification. There were challenges though, but today is the final showdown. It's all about the attacks that are bound to come on this final circuit here around Kansas City. And I have to say, Frankie, a very challenging course.
Yes, a very challenging course. 7 laps around downtown Kansas City, of course the headquarters of Garmin. 2 big hills each lap, of course the hardest one on Summit Street. Now Zabriskie has the biggest gap on second place of 30 seconds, but after that all the rest of the GC riders are very close to each other. The riders are going to have to pay a lot of attention to who's attacking, who's in the brakes, and who's coming back, because if someone is fresh at the end, they could really leapfrog a lot of places on the GC.
Yes, they are. That's what today's stage is all about. It's all about trying to get onto the podium for some riders and maybe for others trying to dethrone Dave Zabriskie at the top end of the overall classification. And it's all going to happen right here around the heart of Kansas City. When we come back after the break, we'll go straight into the action. Well, it's all going to come down to this. The final 72 miles around Kansas City, a very difficult circuit. The riders have to face up to 10.1 miles around, 7 circuits. Frankie, a tricky course, I think, for Team Garmin Slipstream to control this afternoon, because with those 2 climbs every lap, I think there's going to be a lot of attacking.
I believe there'll be a lot of attacking as the starter gun goes off and sends the riders out on their way. 71 miles they're doing over those 10 laps. And of course, the toughest climb out there is Summit Street with grades of 12 to 14%. Garmin Slipstream's going to have a tough job controlling this race, as the riders are going to, for sure, try to test David Zabriskie and Garmin Slipstream's strength.
Well, I think the most important thing to do for Garmin Slipstream in a situation like this, Frankie, on the last day, the team has to go out and lay down the law very early on and start setting the pacemaking before anybody else has the chance to go out and attack. And as you can see already, 2 riders from Garmin Slipstream moving up to the front end of the main field. There is Zabriskie in his yellow jersey. Amazing to think that despite the career of David Zabriskie, he has never actually ever won a stage race in his career. He's won the American title 5 times in the individual time trial. He's won races left and right, but never won a stage race.
Well, now we have a break going off. Gregory Rast, Nicky Sorensen, and Chris Jones from Team Type 1. These 3 riders have broke away from the main peloton, built up a lead of about 30 seconds. Also, a little bit of help for the Garmin Slipstream team is the Cervelo test team. Of course, they're riding for their sprinter, Thor Hushovd. And as you mentioned, there's only one spot we're going to see the Garmin boys, which is going to be in the front of the group. Right now, Cervelo setting a steady pace, not letting this break get too much of a distance.
Well, always amazing on the final day of a race like this, because allegiances can be formed. There are 2 different teams riding at the front end of the main field, both for different reasons. Obviously, Garmin Slipstream are thinking about their man, Dave Zabriskie, in the yellow jersey, but Team Cervelo test team want the whole of the main field to come together on the running towards the finish, because they've got a very fast finisher in the form of Thor Hushovd. But these 3 riders, I have to say, Frankie, set on fire really the acceleration by Team Saxo Bank.
No, they did. Saxo Bank's been very, very active all day long, and Sorensen really driving it. And here we see 2 other riders from Saxo Bank attacking from the peloton. This is despite having 1 rider up in front. So right now, Nicky Sorensen's in front. Jason McCartney and Chris Anker Sorensen are looking to come across. All 3 of these first riders have been working extremely well, trying to distance themselves. It's going to be interesting to see if they're going to wait for their 2 teammates that are coming up. But Saxo Bank really on the attack right now. The chasers are only 10 seconds behind the lead trio.
Yes, but watch out for Jason McCartney, because he started the day in only 14th place overall. He's looking for 1.5 minutes or so to try and get over the top of Dave Zabriskie in the overall classification. And in fact, what's happening here, just on the right-hand side, you may well have noticed that Sorensen, in other words, looking back over his shoulder, he's waiting for his 2 teammates to come along. He must have been informed by race radio.
Well, his 2 mates coming up from behind, so Sorensen deciding to pull off, saying, I'm not working anymore. I'm going to wait for these 2 riders. Of course, Jason McCartney, their best placed rider, one of their best placed riders on GC. Of course, Gustav Larsen in 2nd place. Gregory Rast, Chris Jones, and now 3 riders from Saxo Bank really trying to distance themselves from the pack as they come around the sweeping right-hand corner. The chase mode is full on. It is strung out in one long line, because a little bit of panic as Jason McCartney is the danger man in the front.
Well, Frankie, that gap had come down to around about the 15-second mark. You can see there now as we look from the helicopter the distance between the two groups. But I think now that there are 3 riders from Saxo Bank in that breakaway group, we'll start to see the advantage stretch. One thing you have to say, though, about Team Saxo Bank, it is an unbelievable team, one of the top teams in the world, but they like to race, don't they?
Team Saxo Bank always very aggressive. They make the race, and that's exactly what they're doing here. With 3 riders in the front, they are pushing the pace. Steven Koza in the front right now. Timmy Dugan 2 positions behind. These riders have been chasing all day long, sometimes with the help of the Cervelo team. But there is David Zabriskie in the yellow jersey. The 5 riders trying to distance themselves, and unbelievable. Michael Berry has tried to jump across to this gap. This is a huge effort by Michael Berry from Columbia HTC.
Well, there are not many guys in the sport of professional cycling who can ride across a 30-second gap like that. And I have to say, Frankie, that if Michael Berry makes the junction, and I think he's just about to, he's going to add an awful lot of power to that leading group of riders. They will then be 6 riders strong. That changes the whole look of this race. This breakaway now could survive.
This breakaway maybe with a chance to survive. There's Michael Berry trying to latch onto the back of them. The average speed of this race has been over 30 miles per hour from the beginning. At this high speed, this is an incredible effort by Michael Berry to get onto the back of those riders. Of course, for Columbia HTC, a very good position to have Michael Berry up there, because now they are not going to have to participate at all in the chase.
And of course, Michael Berry will add serious firepower to this leading group of riders going over the underpass there. He's just about to make the junction. That's 6 riders at the front end of the race with around about a 30-second advantage over the main field. This is now looking rather precarious for Team Garmin Slipstream. But many people will say it's not about the bike. Well, I tend to disagree with that, because nowadays these guys ride bikes that weigh in at not much more than 10 pounds.
We're here at the Race Expo looking at some of the finest, lightest cycling equipment on the planet, and we're with Rory of Cannondale, who's going to talk to us about an illegal bike.
Yeah, we've basically got Team Liquigas is racing the Super 6 here this week. The Super 6 frame weighs just about 900 grams for a 56-centimeter frame. That's as much as this water bottle and this trail tool together. So in all, it's a super light bike, and they'll be racing it all week.
And light is the word on that one. We're looking at just over 10 pounds on this bike. Illegal to ride, but I'm sure it's fun. We're here with Luke of Cannondale, who's going to explain to us what makes for a more comfortable bike.
Thank you, Chris. Today we're talking about our Synapse line of performance bicycles. And what's great about these bicycles is they give the average rider a more comfortable ride. And how we do that is a taller head tube that gives them a more upright position. We also incorporate save features into the frame. As you can see here on the fork, we thin this out, and then we also do that at the stays. Now what that does is that gives the rider a more comfortable, compliant ride. Finally, we follow that up with a thinned out seat post, that the closest point of contact to the rider, that helps eat up those bumps. And that is why the Liquigas team chooses to ride the Synapse in some of the early spring classics, such as Paris-Roubaix.
Well, that leading group of 6 riders now back in the main field, and a new move happening here in the final lap of the Tour of Missouri this year. That is Michael Rogers, who's got himself an advantage of around about 10 seconds over the front end of the main field. All of the sprinters now, Frankie, must be starting to lick their lips, but they've got to catch this man, a former 3-time world time trial champion.
Mick Rogers with the strength to be able to hold off that charging peloton. Garmin Slipstream's been out there all day long. Cervelo has been riding all day long. Do they have the numbers to be able to bring it back for another field sprint? Mick Rogers says, no way, I am going to stay out there. Right here we see Team Ouch gathering their efforts to go, and now there's an attack going up the left side of the road. Team Ouch deciding to strike out, trying to bridge that gap up to Mick Rogers.
That is the man he's trying to get to at 3 kilometers to go. Michael Rogers still holding on to around about a 10-second advantage. You can see the counter move here, and you can see just how difficult the run-in is towards the finish line here. If Michael Rogers can just crest this climb here, he could survive on the run-in down towards the finish. He's going to take a right-hand bend, but I would say now his advantage is only 5 seconds.
This has been an extremely tough day. There are riders moving forward, and there are definitely riders going backwards. And the test is, which teams are going to have the strength in numbers to actually perform a lead out for that final sprint? Mick Rogers still with the lead. A couple riders in pursuit, and then the rest of the peloton really trying to track him down, trying to close down that gap in those final kilometers.
Not much of an advantage there. You can see the difference between the leading group. It's now 3 riders strong. Now, this looks like Addy Engels of Team Quickstep. He's a very powerful rider. Mick Rogers digging deep there, trying to get across across the gap to the rider from Holland on the Belgian squad, and he looks down to see what the gap is going to be. Digging deep now, looking for that little bit of courage. He's looking for the victory here this afternoon. He's made the junction just about to Adi Engels. 2 leaders ahead of the main field. It looks like the rider from Ouch is going to disappear.
Right now, the main field is trying to set up for a field sprint. They are flying at speeds of over 40 miles an hour. You can see 2 riders in front. 1 rider stuck in the middle, which is the rider from Ouch, and then the main field charging. Eddie Engels deciding to lead this thing out from a long ways out. He's not waiting for anybody. He's like, Mick Rogers, if you can get on my wheel, you had better get on it right now because I'm going all the way to the finish.
This is not the moment to pause now. They'll be looking up the road very shortly. They will see the black tunnel across the road indicating 1,000 meters to go, and then they will start to think and nurture hopes of a victory here on the final stage around Kansas City. You can see the main field snaking down this road here, left and right, trying to get the shortest distance to the finish line if they can. But for the sprinters to have the day, they have to catch those 2 men. That is the prey that they are looking for.
And we're looking for the white jerseys of Cervelo Testing. They've been on the front for most of the day. Do they still have the numbers to be able to do the lead out? Look at the speed. It is increasing. It is one long line. They are flying down this boulevard, but there's 2 riders holding them off. As these guys are looking at each other, that might be the end of it. You can't pause when you're trying to win a stage like this, especially with the fastman chomping down your neck.
Comfortably in the main field there. You've just seen Dave Zabriskie. He's almost won this race overall. All he has to do now is get himself to the finish line, and he will be the 2009 champion. But there is still a lot of glory at stake this afternoon. Looking over his shoulders, Eddie Engels says to Mick Rogers, come on, mate, we've still got to survive. Otherwise, these guys are going to catch us.
And Mick Rogers not pulling through. He's pausing. He's playing the game. It's the cat and mouse game. Mick Rogers thinking about going for the win. He's forcing Eddie Engels to stay on the front, but it might be a little bit too late because here comes the sprint. Cervelo Test Team on the front. Team Ouch right behind him. You can see the lime green jerseys of Kiki. Everybody lining up in formation for the final lead out.
Ouch on the front, moving up there into second position. That's Jeremy Hunt from Team Cervelo Test Team. On his wheel is the green jersey of Thor Hushoff. They've got a little advantage over the front end of the main field. The British former champion now makes the final kick. He's trying to set the victory up for his own man there, Thor Hushoff. Hushoff in second position. They're all clambering behind to get the wheel of the big Norwegian. Jeremy Hunt still pushing to the line. Here's the acceleration from the Norwegian right up through the middle. There's Francesco Kiki in the lime green jersey of Liquigas. This is the charge for the line. It looks as if Hushoff in fact is fading towards the line. There's a punch there and coming across the line. Well, he came from nowhere. That is in fact Martin Gilbert from Planet Energy. Frankie, I don't know where he came from, but he's one of the young riders on the Canadian squad who has created a big surprise here this afternoon.
A fantastic win by Martin Gilbert. He seemed to create a tailwind on himself where everybody else had a headwind, flying around everybody. The Canadian on a Canadian team coming into this race with a huge win on the very last day.
Fairly certain a lot of people wouldn't have mentioned that name before the start of today's stage, but Martin Gilbert does get himself the victory ahead of Andrew Pinfold of Team Ouch, and Thor Hushoff fading slightly towards the end there in third place with Big Bernard Eisel in fourth. Confirmation then of the final overall standings. Dave Zabriskie wins the 2009 Tour of Missouri by 30 seconds from Gustav Larsen, but moving up on the final day, Marco Pinotti. Congratulations here coming on the left-hand side there from last year's winner, his teammate Christian van der Velde, but the winner and the champion this year is Dave Zabriskie, and we will talk to the new champion straight after the break. Right, well, the suspense right down to the final few meters to decide who was going to win the final stage, but there was no real suspense about who was going to win this bike race overall, because I have to say Dave Zabriskie today never really seemed to be under any threat at all. But Dave, congratulations on the victory, but I have to say rather strange to see your former teammates there from Team Saxo Bank were the teammates who really tried to upset the apple cart today. They really put on a race.
Yeah, they did. They were. It's always expected that team to be aggressive. Bjarne, he loves to put pressure on the race and put on a good show, and they definitely did that.
Well, this is probably one of the most important races for you because you've been knocking on the door of an overall victory now for many, many years. Twice you finished second overall in the Amgen Tour of California. Finally, a big overall win in a stage race. You must be a pretty happy man this evening.
Yeah, I'm speechless. Yeah, I mean, with 2 laps to go, I felt like I was very emotional. I almost started crying in the race, and then I just, come on, Dave, you got to do one more lap. And then for some reason, those teary-eyed feelings are gone right now. But I mean, it's just the work that the team puts in it for you, and just it's a good feeling. have it all over with and have success here is very nice.
With all the attacks that happened in the first part of the race, you mentioned with 2 laps to go, you started almost tearing up. Did you ever feel like things were getting out of control, or did you always feel like things were under control because you knew you had that 30-second gap and some of the riders going up the road were about 1:30 back? But it was, it really was a wild and exciting race.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a difficult circuit to finish a race like this. It wasn't easy by any means. Just keeping the speed and knowing the gaps we needed to keep the riders at, that's what we did. And it pretty much came all back. Yeah, it all came back together in the end, and it worked out perfectly. Well, I mean, I knew who I had to watch. Gustav, he gave it a go that last lap.
Yep.
It felt like my heart was going to come out of my body trying to chase him and George down, but that was really the only threatening time.
Well, when you have good legs, obviously you can do incredible rides out there. What's the difference? You've come close. I mean, you're a great climber, a great time trialist, but here at the Tour of Missouri, you really put everything together to come out on top with that yellow jersey. What do you think was the difference that this time you were able to come out on top and win with your first overall stage win?
Yeah, that's the way it goes sometimes. I mean, some of it's luck, some of it's, I'm in really great shape. And the first couple of days wasn't really aggressive racing. It seemed like all the teams wanted it to come down to the time trial. I definitely wanted it to come down to the time trial, and that's what happened, and I won. And then
what's next for you?
Yeah, I'm pulling the plug after this. Yeah.
Plain and simple. Wipe the slate clean. Go off on a good note.
Yeah, I've been actually battling a little Achilles tendonitis all week, and this is it.
No, certainly it's been a great week of racing here at the Tour of Missouri. Dramatic racing every day, excitement in the sprints. The foundations laid for the overall victory by Dave Zabriskie in that individual time trial. Congratulations, Dave. On behalf of Frankie Andreu and the rest of the crew here, we've enjoyed the Tour of Missouri this year. And I'm Paul Sherwin saying goodbye, and we hope to see you the next time.